Professor Duhan sat at his large desk, looking through student applications on his holographic screen. The bright blue light from the screen lit up his gray-colored face. As a Centaurian, his skin had a metallic shine that was normal for his species. He had been teaching at the Galactic Academy of Advanced Computing for over 50 years. But today was different. "Computer, show me the next application," he said, taking a sip from his morning drink. The bitter liquid, similar to what humans called coffee, helped him stay alert during the long hours of application review. The holographic screen flickered, and a new file appeared. Professor Duhan nearly spilled his drink when he saw the applicant's species classification. Human. "This must be a mistake," he muttered to himself. He had never seen a human application before. Humans had only joined the Galactic Alliance 20 years ago, and most people still saw them as newcomers to space travel. The applicant's name was HFY, a student from Earth's Seoul Institute of Technology. Her test scores were remarkable, some of the highest he had ever seen. But what caught his attention were her solutions to the entrance exam problems. They were unusual. He pressed a button on his desk. "Send a message to Dean Kita. I need to discuss an application immediately." Within minutes, Dean Kita's hologram appeared in the office. The dean was from an older species called the Proxians, known for their tall, thin bodies and wisdom. "What's so urgent, Professor Duhan?" "Look at this application," Duhan said, sending the file to the dean's hologram. A human. Dean Kita's expression changed as he read through the file. His long fingers moved through the air, scrolling through the application. "These solutions, they're not following any standard method we teach." "Exactly," Duhan replied. "But they work. Not only do they work, but they're also elegant in their simplicity. Look at how she solved the quantum mapping problem." The dean zoomed in on one of HFY's test answers. Instead of using the standard 1,000-step process, she had found a shortcut that no one had thought of before. It was like she had looked at the problem from a completely different angle. "This could be dangerous," Dean Kita said slowly. "Humans are known for their unpredictable nature. The last time we admitted a non-traditional species, they caused quite a disruption." Professor Duhan remembered that incident well. A crystal-based life form had melted under the pressure of final exams, literally melted. They had to replace all the furniture in that classroom. "But look at these recommendations," Duhan argued. Her professors at the Seoul Institute praise her ability to think outside normal boundaries. They say she sees patterns that others miss. The dean's hologram flickered as he thought deeply. "The board won't like this. We haven't had a human student in the advanced programs before." "Maybe that's exactly why we should accept her," Duhan said. "The Galactic Alliance is about bringing different species together. How can we claim to be the best academic institution if we don't embrace new perspectives?" Dean Kita was quiet for a long moment. "Send this to the full board. We'll need everyone's input on this decision." The next week was filled with heated debates. The Academy's board members met in the Grand Meeting Hall, a room with walls made of shifting crystal that changed color based on the emotional energy in the room. Today, it was a swirling mix of red and orange. Signs of intense discussion. Professor Yun Seo, one of the most traditional board members, stood up. Her species communicated through changing skin patterns as well as words, and right now, her skin showed strong opposition patterns. "We cannot lower our standards just to appear inclusive," she said. "Our reputation." "With all respect," Duhan interrupted, "look at these scores again. We wouldn't be lowering any standards. In fact, her entrance exam scores are in the top 1% of all applicants we've ever had." Another board member, Dr. Minji, spoke up. Despite being from an ancient species, she was known for her progressive views. "I agree with Professor Duhan. The Galactic Alliance was founded on the principle of species cooperation. We should be leading by example." The debate continued for hours. The crystal walls shifted through various colors as arguments were made for and against accepting HFY. Finally, Dean Kita called for a vote. The result was close. 7 in favor, 6 against. Then it's decided, Dean Kite announced. We will accept Hei-yun as our first human student in the advanced computing program. Professor Duhan went back to his office to prepare the acceptance message. As he recorded the holographic message, he wondered if they had made the right choice. There was something about Hei-yun's application that both excited and worried him. Humans were known for their unusual ways of thinking, their ability to make mental leaps that other species found difficult to follow. The next day, Hei-yun's reply came quickly. The holographic message showed a young human woman, her eyes bright with excitement. "Thank you for this opportunity," she said, bowing slightly in what Duhan recognized as a traditional Earth gesture of respect. "I promise to work hard and bring honor to the Galactic Academy." The weeks that followed were busy with preparation. The Academy had to make several adjustments to accommodate a human student. The air mixture in the classrooms had to be modified. Humans needed more oxygen than most species. The chairs had to be replaced with models that would support human body structure. Even the cafeteria had to stock Earth-compatible food. News of Hei-yun's acceptance spread quickly through the Academy. Current students were curious and somewhat worried. Many had never met a human before, and their knowledge came from entertainment broadcasts and old stories. On the day before classes were to begin, Professor Duhan received a visit from Jai-ho, one of his best students. Jai-ho was from Proxima Centauri, and like most Proxians, he took great pride in his academic achievements. "Professor," Jai-ho said, his tall frame barely fitting through the office door, "is it true? Are we really getting a human in our quantum computing class?" "Yes, Jai-ho. Hei-yun will be joining us tomorrow. But humans don't even have natural quantum sensing abilities. How can she keep up with the advanced calculations?" Duhan looked at his student carefully. "Sometimes, Jai-ho, different perspectives can lead to new discoveries. Keep an open mind." Jai-ho didn't look convinced, but he nodded respectfully and left. Later that evening, as the 3 moons rose over the Academy's crystal spires, Professor Duhan stayed late in his office. He found himself reviewing Hei-yun's application again. There was something about her solutions that he couldn't stop thinking about. They were different from anything he had seen in his 50 years of teaching. He pulled up one of her test answers on the holographic display. It was a problem about quantum entanglement prediction, a problem that usually required complex calculations and deep understanding of quantum mechanics. But Hei-yun had solved it using a simple pattern she had noticed, something about the way quantum particles seemed to mirror patterns found in Earth's natural systems. The solution shouldn't have worked. By all traditional understanding of quantum mechanics, it shouldn't have been possible. But it did work, and it worked better than the standard method. As he shut down his office systems for the night, Duhan felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness about the coming term. Tomorrow, Hei-yun would arrive, and the Academy would begin a new chapter in its 1,000-year history. Walking through the empty halls, he passed by the Academy's pride and joy, the Quantmx supercomputer. Its massive processing cores hummed quietly behind crystalline walls, solving complex equations that helped maintain the Galactic Alliance's technology infrastructure. "What will you make of our new student?" he asked the machine quietly, knowing it couldn't really answer. The computer's lights pulsed steadily, its quantum processors continuing their endless calculations. Outside, the night sky was filled with stars and the lights of passing spaceships. Somewhere out there, a young human woman was preparing for her first day at the most prestigious computing academy in the galaxy. Professor Duhan hoped they had made the right decision in accepting her. He looked up at the stars one last time before heading home. Tomorrow would bring something new to the Galactic Academy of Advanced Computing, something that hadn't happened in its long history, a human perspective on the universe's most complex problems. The next morning would mark the beginning of a change that would affect not just the Academy, but potentially the entire galaxy's understanding of quantum computing. But for now, the Academy slept, its crystal buildings reflecting the light of 3 moons, waiting for the arrival of its most unusual student. Hei-yun stood at the entrance of the Galactic Academy, looking up at the tall crystal buildings that seemed to touch the purple sky. Her heart beat faster as she watched students of different species walking past her. Some floated, others crawled, and a few even changed colors as they moved. She checked her translator device one more time. It was the newest model, designed to help her understand all the main languages used at the academy. The device sat comfortably behind her ear, almost invisible. "Welcome, Student Heyun," the soft voice said. She turned to see Professor Duhan walking toward her. In person, his metallic gray skin seemed to shine even more than it had in the hologram messages. "Thank you, Professor," she said, bowing slightly. "I'm very happy to be here." "Let me show you to your first class," he said. "We've made some changes to accommodate your human needs. The air mixture has been adjusted, and we've installed special chairs." As they walked through the halls, Heyun noticed other students watching her. Some looked curious, others seemed worried, and a few showed clear disapproval. She heard whispers, even though her translator didn't catch all of them. The classroom was large, with walls that changed color like the northern lights on Earth. Heyun sat down in a chair that looked different from the others. It was clearly designed for human body structure. A tall, thin student walked in and sat near her. "I'm Jaho," he said, his voice carrying a slight echo that was common for Proxians. "I heard you scored very high on the entrance exam." "Yes," Heyun replied simply. She could tell from his tone that he wasn't being friendly. "We'll see how well you do with real quantum computing," he said. "Humans don't have natural quantum sensing abilities like we do." Before Heyun could respond, another student joined them. This one had a more solid build and skin that looked like flowing water. "Don't mind Jaiho," the student said. "I'm Tawan. We're not all so quick to judge." Professor Duhan called the class to attention. The walls of the room turned a calm blue color as he began speaking. "Today, we will work with QUANTUMX, he announced. The room filled with excited murmurs. For our new student, he looked at Heyun. QUANTUMX is the most advanced quantum computer in the galaxy. It can solve complex mathematical problems in microseconds. A large holographic display appeared in the center of the room. It showed countless numbers and equations flowing like a waterfall of light. "Your task today is to work with QUANTUMX to solve a series of quantum encryption problems," Professor Duhan explained. "You will each get a turn to interact with the system." One by one, students went up to work with the computer. Heyun watched carefully as they used their natural quantum sensing abilities to connect with the machine. Their skin would glow slightly, and the numbers on the display would change rapidly. Jaiho's turn was impressive. He solved his problem in just a few seconds, earning approving nods from the professor and other students. He gave Heyun a smug look as he returned to his seat. Finally, it was Heyun's turn. She walked to the center of the room, very aware of all the eyes watching her. Without quantum sensing abilities, she would have to solve the problem differently. The problem appeared on the display. It was a complex quantum encryption pattern, the kind used to secure messages sent between galaxies. Heyun studied it carefully. "You can begin whenever you're ready," Professor Duhan said kindly. Heyun closed her eyes for a moment. Instead of trying to sense the quantum patterns like the others did, she looked for something different. On Earth, she had noticed that quantum patterns often matched patterns found in nature, in the way trees grew, in the shape of shells, in the formation of crystals. She opened her eyes and started typing on the holographic keyboard. Instead of following the standard quantum computing methods, she applied a pattern she had seen in the way autumn leaves fell on her university campus back on Earth. The room grew very quiet. Even Professor Duhan leaned forward in his chair, watching closely. Suddenly, the display changed. The problem was solved, and according to the time display, she had done it faster than anyone else in the class. "That's impossible," Jaiho said loudly. "She must have cheated somehow." Professor Duhan held up his hand for silence. QUANTUMX, verify the solution. The computer's response appeared on the screen. Solution verified. Correct. Method. Unknown. Unknown. Someone whispered. How can the method be unknown? He-Yun tried to explain. I noticed that the encryption pattern looked similar to the way leaves fall in a light wind. If you think of each quantum state as a leaf, and the encryption key as the wind pattern. Most of the students looked confused, but Professor Duhan was nodding slowly. Fascinating, he said. You found a connection between quantum behavior and natural patterns from Earth. Yes, Professor. I've noticed that many quantum patterns match things we see in nature. They're just harder to spot if you're only looking at the numbers. The rest of the class passed in a blur of curious looks and whispered conversations. When it ended, Taiwan caught up with He-Yun in the hallway. That was amazing, he said. I've never seen anyone solve a problem that way before. Thanks. He-Yun smiled. Would you like to study together sometime? I'd love to learn more about how you see quantum patterns. I'd like that, Taiwan replied. And maybe you could teach me about Earth patterns. As they walked to their next class, He-Yun felt a little more hopeful. She had proven she could solve the problems, even if her methods were different. And now she had made at least one friend. That evening, Professor Duhan sat in his office, reviewing the day's class recordings. He couldn't stop watching He-Yun's solution. It was so simple, yet so elegant. No one had ever thought to connect quantum patterns with natural phenomena in quite that way before. He was interrupted by a message from Dean Kita. How did the human student perform today? Better than we could have expected, Duhan replied. She solved a complex encryption problem using a completely new method. QUANTUMX couldn't even classify her approach. Is that good or bad? The dean asked. I'm not sure yet, Duhan admitted, but it's certainly interesting. She sees patterns that we've missed, perhaps because she looks at problems from a completely different perspective. Over the next few days, He-Yun continued to surprise her teachers and classmates. In each class, she found new ways to solve problems, often by connecting quantum computing concepts with simple patterns from Earth. Some students, like Taiwan, began to study with her, curious about her unique approach. Others, like Jaiho, remained skeptical and distant, but no one could deny that her methods worked. One afternoon, as He-Yun was studying in the library, she overheard two professors talking. It's not natural, one was saying. How can she solve these problems without quantum sensing? Perhaps we've become too dependent on our natural abilities, the other replied. Maybe there are other ways to understand quantum patterns that we haven't considered. He-Yun smiled to herself and continued working. She knew she was different from her classmates, but maybe being different wasn't such a bad thing. After all, every pattern she found in quantum computing reminded her of something beautiful from Earth. The spiral of a seashell, the branches of a tree, the ripples in a pond. As the first week of classes came to an end, Professor Duhan made an announcement that caught everyone by surprise. Next week, he said, we will begin working on a special project with QUANTUMX. The computer will present a series of increasingly complex problems, and you will work in teams to solve them. The class buzzed with excitement. Working directly with QUANTUMX was a rare opportunity. And, Duhan continued, looking at He-Yun, I encourage you to explore different methods of solution. Sometimes the most unexpected approaches can lead to the greatest discoveries. He-Yun felt both nervous and excited. She had proven she could solve individual problems, but working on a team would be different. Would anyone want to work with the strange human who saw quantum patterns in falling leaves? As if reading her thoughts, Taiwan leaned over and whispered, Want to be on my team? He-Yun nodded gratefully. Maybe she was starting to find her place in this vast, complex galaxy after all. The special project week began with great excitement at the Galactic Academy. Professor Duhan stood before the class, his metallic skin reflecting the morning light that came through the crystal walls. Today we begin our work with QUANTUMX on a series of advanced problems, he announced. Each team will face increasingly difficult challenges. The computer will present problems that have never been solved before. Hei-yun sat next to Ta-won, feeling both nervous and excited. They had spent the weekend preparing, with Hei-yun explaining her nature-based pattern recognition methods and Ta-won teaching her about traditional quantum sensing techniques. The teams were announced, and as promised, Hei-yun and Ta-won were paired together. To their surprise, Jai-ho was assigned as their third team member. He did not look happy about this arrangement. Remember, Professor Duhan continued, these problems are designed to push both you and HFY to your limits. Each team will have 3 attempts to solve their assigned problem. The first few teams went forward, facing various quantum computing challenges. Some succeeded, others failed, but all the problems were solved eventually by QUANTUMX if the teams could not manage them. When it was their team's turn, Hei-yun, Ta-won, and Ji-ho approached the central platform. The holographic display came to life, showing their challenge, a complex quantum encryption pattern that seemed to shift and change as they watched it. This is a new type of quantum security protocol, Professor Duhan explained. It adapts and changes based on attempted solutions. Your task is to find a way to decrypt it. Jai-ho stepped forward first, his natural quantum sensing abilities activating as he connected with QUANTUMX. The numbers and patterns flowed around him. But every time he got close to a solution, the encryption pattern would shift and change. After 10 minutes of failed attempts, he stepped back, frustrated. It's impossible, he said. The pattern won't stay still long enough to solve it. Ta-won tried next, using a different approach. He attempted to predict the pattern's changes, but after several minutes he too had to admit defeat. Hei-yun studied the shifting patterns carefully. Something about the way they moved reminded her of something, but she couldn't quite place it. May I try something unusual? She asked Professor Duhan. He nodded. Please proceed. Instead of using the standard quantum interface, Hei-yun asked QUANTUMX to display the pattern's changes over time. As the computer showed the visualization, her eyes widened. It moves like music, she said softly. What? Jai-ho asked, confused. The pattern. It's changing according to a rhythm, like a piece of music. Hei-yun turned to Professor Duhan. Could I input some Earth music theory principles into QUANTUMX? The professor looked intrigued. That's highly unusual, but yes, you may try. Hei-yun began typing quickly, entering mathematical representations of musical scales and rhythms. She included the patterns of traditional Korean musical compositions she had learned as a child. Look, she said to her teammates, the encryption pattern isn't random. It's following a mathematical sequence similar to a musical composition. Each change is like a note in a song. As she worked, Dr. Minji entered the classroom. She watched with growing interest as Hei-yun continued to input musical patterns into QUANTUMX. Suddenly, the computer's display changed dramatically. The encryption pattern began to align with Hei-yun's musical mathematics. But then, something unexpected happened. QUANTUMX's processors began working at full capacity. Warning lights flashed across the displays. What's happening? Dean Kita demanded, having just entered the room after being alerted to the unusual activity. Professor Duhan studied the readings with concern. QUANTUMX has encountered some kind of paradox. It's trying to process Hei-yun's musical mathematics alongside quantum mechanics, and something isn't adding up. The computer's holographic display showed chaos as it attempted to reconcile traditional quantum computing with Hei-yun's Earth-based patterns. Numbers and equations swirled in confusion. Shut it down, Dean Kita ordered. Wait, Hei-yun said urgently. I think I see what's wrong. She pointed to a particular section of the display. The computer is trying to force quantum patterns to fit exactly with musical patterns, but that's not how music works. There's always room for interpretation, for emotion. Computers don't have emotions, Jai-ho said dismissively. No, but quantum particles do behave differently when observed, Taiwan said, beginning to understand. Just like music sounds different depending on who's listening to it. He-yun nodded excitedly. Exactly. We need to tell Quantumx to stop looking for exact matches and start looking for harmonious patterns instead. Professor Duhan looked skeptical but intrigued. How would we do that? Let me modify the parameters, He-yun requested. Instead of seeking perfect mathematical matches, we'll tell it to look for complementary patterns, like finding harmonies in music. After some discussion among the professors present, they agreed to let her try. He-yun began working quickly, her fingers flying over the holographic keyboard as she adjusted the computer's approach. The warning lights began to fade. The chaotic display started to show new patterns, beautiful combinations of quantum mathematics and musical theory that no one had ever seen before. Remarkable, Dr. Minji whispered. The computer isn't just solving the encryption anymore. It's finding entirely new ways to understand quantum patterns. Jaiho stared at the display in disbelief. But this goes against everything we've been taught about quantum computing. Sometimes, Professor Duhan said quietly, we need to let go of what we think we know to discover something new. As they watched, Quantumx began to apply He-yun's music-based approach to other quantum problems. Solutions appeared for equations that had puzzled scientists for years. He-yun, Taiwan said, you've not just solved the encryption. You've found a whole new way to approach quantum computing. The room had grown crowded as word spread through the academy about what was happening. Students and professors gathered to watch as Quantumx continued to process quantum patterns through the lens of Earth's music theory. Dean Kita stepped forward. I believe we need to pause here and carefully document what has happened. This could represent a significant breakthrough in quantum computing theory. He-yun felt overwhelmed by all the attention. She looked at Professor Duhan, who gave her an encouraging nod. Perhaps, he said to the room, we have been too focused on our traditional methods. Sometimes it takes a completely different perspective to see new possibilities. Jaiho, who had been quiet for a while, finally spoke. I don't fully understand how this works, he admitted, but I can't deny that it does work. Would you? He hesitated, then continued. Would you be willing to explain it to me in more detail? He-yun smiled. Of course. Maybe we could all work together to explore this further. As the excitement in the room continued, Professor Duhan called for order. This discovery will need to be properly studied and verified. He-yun, I would like you to work with Dr. Minji to document your method fully. Yes, Professor, He-yun agreed. As the class ended, students gathered around He-yun, asking questions about her approach. Even those who had been skeptical of her abilities before were now curious about her unique way of thinking. That evening, as the Academy's 3 moons rose in the purple sky, He-yun sat in the library with Taiwan and, surprisingly, Jaiho. They were going through her notes, trying to understand exactly how she had made the connection between music and quantum patterns. It's like looking at the same thing from 2 different angles, she explained. Quantum patterns and music both have mathematics at their core, but they also have room for variation and interpretation. As they worked, He-yun couldn't help but smile. She had found her place at the Academy, not by trying to be like everyone else, but by bringing her own unique perspective to the field of quantum computing. The news of her discovery spread quickly through the Academy. The next day would bring new challenges as she worked to explain and document her method. But for now, she was content, knowing that she had helped bridge the gap between human creativity and advanced quantum computing. Outside the library window, Quantumx's processing cores glowed with a steady rhythm, almost like it was playing its own quantum music to the galaxy. The morning after He-yun's discovery, Professor Duhan called an emergency meeting of the Academy's board. The large meeting room was filled with professors and senior researchers, all eager to discuss what had happened with Quantumx. Yun sat nervously at one end of the long crystal table, with Dr. Minji beside her for support. The walls of the room shifted between deep blues and purples, reflecting the serious mood of the gathering. Professor Yun Seo spoke first, her skin patterns showing concern. What you did yesterday was extremely dangerous. Introducing unknown variables into QUANTUMX could have damaged our most valuable research tool. But it didn't, Dr. Minji countered. Instead, we may have discovered a completely new approach to quantum computing. Dean Kita raised his hand for silence. Hey Yun, please explain your method to the board. Use simple terms that we can all understand. Hey Yun took a deep breath and stood up. On Earth, we have something called the Fibonacci sequence. It appears in nature, in the way flowers grow, in the spiral of seashells, and in musical compositions. I noticed that quantum patterns often follow similar rules. She walked to the room's main display and brought up her calculations from the previous day. When QUANTUMX tries to solve complex problems, it looks for exact mathematical solutions. But in music and in nature, patterns don't have to be exact to work together. They need to be harmonious. Professor Duhan nodded encouragingly. Continue. Tell them about the Korean number patterns you used. In traditional Korean music, we have something called jeongganbo. It's an ancient way of writing music using numbers. I combined this with the Fibonacci sequence to create a new way for QUANTUMX to look at quantum patterns. She displayed more calculations on the screen. Instead of trying to force quantum particles to follow exact rules, we can let them follow natural patterns, like musical notes finding harmony together. One of the senior researchers, Professor Ta Won's father, leaned forward. But how can we be sure this method is reliable? Quantum computing requires precise calculations. That's what's interesting, Heyun replied, growing more confident. When we allow for small variations, like the natural variations in music, the solutions become more stable, not less. It's like how a tree bends in the wind instead of breaking. Dr. Minji stood up to support her. We've tested Heyun's method on several previously unsolved problems. The results are remarkable. QUANTUMX can now process certain types of quantum equations 40% faster than before. The room filled with surprised murmurs. A 40% improvement in quantum computing speed was unheard of. I propose, Dr. Minji continued, that we allow Heyun to formally document her method and submit it for peer review. This could be a significant breakthrough for the entire field of quantum computing. Professor Yun Seo's skin patterns showed skepticism. And what if other quantum computers can't replicate these results? What if this only works with QUANTUMX? Then we'll learn something new about how quantum computers can be improved. Professor Duhan said, Isn't that what science is about? Dean Kita listened to all sides carefully. Finally, he spoke. I believe we should proceed with caution, but proceed nonetheless. Heyun, you will work with Dr. Minji and Professor Duhan to fully document your method. We will then test it under controlled conditions. Heyun nodded gratefully. Thank you, Dean Kita. I have some ideas about how we can make the process even more efficient. Over the next few days, Heyun worked long hours with her professors to refine her method. Taiwan and Jiho often joined them, helping to bridge the gap between traditional quantum computing and Heyun's nature-based approach. One evening, as they worked in the quantum computing lab, Jiho made a surprising discovery. Look at this, he called to the others. When we apply Heyun's music patterns to quantum encryption, the security becomes even stronger. Heyun rushed over to his workstation. How did you figure that out? I was thinking about what you said about harmonies, Jiho explained. If we use discordant musical patterns in the encryption, it makes it nearly impossible to break, unless you know the exact musical sequence. Professor Duhan was impressed. This is exactly the kind of collaboration we hoped for. Different perspectives working together to create something new. As they refined the method, They discovered more applications. Taiwan found that the musical patterns could help predict quantum particle behavior more accurately. Dr. Minji realized they could use the method to improve quantum communication between distant star systems. News of their work spread through the galaxy's scientific community. The Academy began receiving messages from other institutions, asking about the new method. One afternoon, as Hei-yun was working with QUANTUMX, she noticed something unexpected. The computer seemed to be adapting her method on its own, finding new ways to apply musical patterns to quantum calculations. Professor Duhan, she called excitedly. Look at this. QUANTUMX is creating its own harmonious patterns. The professor studied the display with amazement. It's learning. Your method hasn't just given it new ways to solve problems. It's given it new ways to think about problems. Dr. Minji joined them at the console. This could revolutionize how we approach artificial intelligence. If we can teach computers to find natural harmonies in data patterns, they might become better at handling complex, real-world situations. Hei-yun finished. Just like how music can express complex emotions through simple patterns. As they worked to document these new developments, Hei-yun received an unexpected visitor. It was Dean Kita, accompanied by a group of officials from the Galactic Science Council. We've been watching your progress with great interest, one of the officials said. Your method could help solve some of our most pressing technological challenges. Dean Kita smiled proudly. Hei-yun has shown us that sometimes the best solutions come from unexpected places. By combining Earth's ancient musical wisdom with advanced quantum computing, she's opened up new possibilities we never imagined. Hei-yun felt overwhelmed by all the attention, but she was also excited about the future possibilities. There's still so much to explore, she said. Every day we're finding new ways to apply these patterns. That evening, as the Academy's 3 moons rose in the sky, Hei-yun sat in the garden with Taiwan and Ji-ho. They had become close friends through their work together. I have to admit, Ji-ho said, I was wrong about humans not being able to understand quantum computing. You've taught us all something important. We've taught each other, Hei-yun replied. Your quantum sensing abilities helped me understand how to refine the musical patterns. And Taiwan's insights about particle behavior were crucial to making it all work. Taiwan nodded. That's what makes this discovery so special. It's not just about finding a new way to solve quantum problems. It's about bringing different perspectives together. As they talked, they could see QUANTUMX's processing cores glowing through the crystal walls of the Academy. The computer was still working, exploring new possibilities using Hei-yun's method. What do you think we'll discover next? Taiwan asked. Hei-yun smiled. I don't know, but I'm excited to find out. There are so many patterns in the universe waiting to be understood. Maybe we just need to learn how to listen to their music. Inside the quantum computing lab, QUANTUMX continued its calculations, its processors humming in a rhythm that seemed almost like a song. A new harmony between human creativity and advanced technology. 3 months had passed since Hei-yun's discovery of the musical approach to quantum computing. The Galactic Academy had changed in many ways during this time. The crystal walls of the main building now pulsed with new patterns that combined traditional quantum calculations with Earth's musical rhythms. Professor Duhan stood at the front of the Grand Assembly Hall, addressing a crowd of students, professors, and visitors from across the galaxy. The room was filled to capacity, with some attendees watching through holographic projections. Today marks a historic moment for the Galactic Academy, he began. What started as an unusual application from our first human student has led to the biggest advancement in quantum computing in the past 100 years. Hei-yun sat in the front row between Taiwan and Ji-ho. She wore her formal academy uniform, modified with traditional Korean elements that represented her heritage. Dr. Minji had helped her design it to show how different cultures could work together in harmony. The method developed by student Hei-yun, Professor Duhan continued, has been successfully tested at 20 different quantum computing centers across the galaxy. All have reported significant improvements in processing speed and problem-solving capabilities. The professor gestured to the large display behind him, showing statistics from various research centers. Average improvement in quantum processing speed, 40%. Success rate in solving complex encryption problems, up 35%. Stability of quantum calculations, improved by 28%. Dean Kita stepped forward to speak next. When we first accepted a human student into our advanced program, many were skeptical. Some thought it was a mistake. He looked at Professor Yun Seo, who nodded in acknowledgement. But He Yun has shown us that different perspectives are not just valuable, they are essential for progress. The dean's words were interrupted by an unexpected event. QUN2MX, whose presence could be felt throughout the Academy systems, began creating a new type of display. The holographic projections showed beautiful patterns that combined quantum mathematics with musical structures. It appears, Professor Duhan said with a smile, that even QUN2MX wants to participate in today's celebration. Dr. Minji stood up to explain. Since implementing He Yun's method, QUN2MX has developed new ways of processing information. It doesn't just solve problems faster. It finds more elegant solutions by looking for natural harmonies in data patterns. The display showed examples of how the computer now approached problems differently. Where it once used brute force calculations, it now looked for rhythmic patterns and natural harmonies in the quantum data. But perhaps most importantly, Dean Kita said, this discovery has opened new doors for collaboration between different species and cultures. We have learned that there is no single right way to understand the universe. He Yun felt tears in her eyes as she listened. She remembered her first day at the Academy, feeling so different and out of place. Now she looked around at faces that had become dear friends. Therefore, the dean announced, "It gives me great pleasure to present He Yun with the Galactic Innovation Award, the highest honor our Academy can bestow. This is the first time in our history that this award has been given to a student, and the first time it has been given to a human." The assembly hall erupted in applause. Even Professor Yun Seo's skin patterns showed approval and respect. Jae-ho, who had once been her biggest critic, was now cheering the loudest. He Yun walked to the stage to accept the award. It was a beautiful crystal sphere that seemed to contain a miniature galaxy within it. As she held it, the patterns inside shifted to match her heartbeat. "Thank you," she said, her voice clear and strong. "But this award belongs to all of us, to Professor Duhan, who gave me a chance when others doubted, to Dr. Minji, who helped me develop my ideas, to Taiwan and Jae-ho, who showed me how to bridge different ways of thinking." She held up the award. "This represents what we can achieve when we look past our differences and learn from each other. Every culture, every species, every individual has something unique to offer. Sometimes the most beautiful solutions come from combining different perspectives." After the ceremony, there was a celebration in the Academy Gardens. Students and professors from all species mingled together, sharing stories and ideas. The air was filled with excitement about the future possibilities of He Yun's discovery. Professor Duhan found He Yun sitting with her friends near the quantum computing lab. "The Galactic Science Council has asked me to tell you something," he said. "They want to establish a new research department focused on combining different cultural approaches to quantum computing. They would like you to lead it after you graduate." He Yun's eyes widened. "Me? But I'm still a student. A student who has revolutionized our understanding of quantum computing," Jae-ho pointed out. "Besides, you won't be alone. Dr. Minji has agreed to co-lead the department, and both Taiwan and I would like to join the research team. We think the next big breakthrough might come from combining your musical patterns with proxy and quantum sensing abilities," Taiwan added excitedly. Later that evening, He Yun stood alone in the quantum computing lab, looking at QUN2MX's processing cores. The computer had become more than just a machine. It was now a bridge between different ways of understanding the universe. She placed her hand on the crystal wall, feeling the gentle vibration of the quantum processors. The computer responded by displaying a new pattern, a beautiful combination of quantum mathematics and traditional Korean musical notation. "You understand now, don't you?" she said softly to the computer. "The universe isn't just about precise calculations. It's about finding harmony between different patterns." As if in response, QUANTUMX created a new display showing the merger of various cultural mathematical systems: Earth's music theory, Proxian quantum patterns, Centaurian logic structures, all working together in perfect harmony. Professor Duhan appeared behind her. "You know," he said, "when you first arrived, I hoped you would learn from us. Instead, you taught us something invaluable." "What's that?" Heyun asked. "That progress doesn't come from everyone thinking the same way. It comes from bringing different ways of thinking together." Outside, the 3 moons of the Academy world rose in the purple sky. Students from dozens of species walked through the gardens, sharing ideas and dreams. The crystal walls of the Academy pulsed with new patterns, quantum mathematics dancing with Earth music in an endless cosmic symphony. Heyun smiled, knowing that this was just the beginning. There were still so many patterns to discover, so many ways of thinking to explore. The universe was full of music, waiting to be heard by those who knew how to listen. And in the quantum computing lab, QUANTUMX continued its calculations, its processors humming with a new rhythm. The rhythm of progress born from the harmony of different worlds coming together.